Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, a warm benvenuto to the Embassy of Italy, a virtual hug to all of you for celebrating with us such an important milestone, the 160th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Italy and the United States. We are honored to be joined here today in Washington, D.C. by Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy, Luigi Di Maio, who visited yesterday with Secretary Blinken at the Department of State. There cannot be a stronger sign of the enduring friendship between Italy and the United States. A heartfelt grazie to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, for honoring us with her presence. Our esteemed guests today are the Vice President of the Constitutional Court and former Prime Minister of Italy, Giuliano Amato, Secretary Madeleine Albright, as well as high-level representatives from the world of business, science, and media. And I would be remiss if I didn't extend a warm welcome to my good friends and partners Fred Kemp and Giampiero Massolo, with whom I've long enjoyed such a productive relationship. Finally, a special grazie to Atlantic Council and ISPI, the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, for organizing this very special event. Today, we pay tribute to the unique partnership between Italy and the United States, as well as to our shared values, historical ties, and many cultural and human relations. The United States was among the first governments to officially recognize the then Kingdom of Italy back in 1861. To mark this special year, the Embassy has organized an exhibition on historical documents retracing the beginning of diplomatic relations between our two countries, which I invite those of you who are present today to enjoy later. Our common identity dates back to a time when our two nations had not yet been born. It developed in the arts, sciences, and in political thought, as well as through the lives and ideas of great men such as Filippo Mazzei and Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin and Gaetano Filangieri, Giuseppe Garibaldi, and of course, Abraham Lincoln. We are proud of a man of vision and courage from Genoa who set his course to the west and connected the two shores of what has become the strongest alliance in history. And of all this was before the start of diplomatic relations. Just think of the enormous strides we have made since. Our steadfast alliance in a bilateral context or multilateral fora, our military standing side by side in so many challenging areas of the world globe, or of the other different challenges we face today, starting with the pandemic that so greatly affected our lives and which we are striving to put behind us. Or again, the challenge of climate change. Italy, as a G20 chair and COP26 co-chair, is working hard to make this a global priority. Indeed, in the recent joint op-ed, Minister Di Maio and Secretary Blinken outlined how Italy and the United States share the same goals regarding the issues that are at the heart of the Italian presidency of the G20 and COP26. Our collaboration spans and expands in all sectors, from business to science. Indeed, we will hear from Mrs. Emma Marcegaglia, a shining example of Italian entrepreneurship and a model for so many young Italian entrepreneurs eager to expand the business across the Atlantic. Mrs. Francesca Rossi, whose work on the ethics of artificial intelligence is instrumental in enhancing the partnership between Italian and American scientists, will also tell us about her exciting work. But our collaboration goes to infinity and beyond. Just think of other cutting-edge technology fields, such as space. By way of example of Italy's key contribution to the International Space Station, and of course, and I really wanted to send them a very, very strong virtual hug, our great community of Americans of Italian descent, which is a living testimony of human relations which have forged and continue to forge a unique and ever stronger bond. To mark the special role that culture, and particularly music, play in this very special relationship, our day-long celebration will include a real treat. The broadcast of a concert under the baton of celebrated Maestro Gianandrea Noseda with the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center of Performing Arts here in Washington, D.C. To the Maestro and to the Kennedy Center goes our heartfelt grazie for such an incredible gift, a joyful testament to the outstanding cooperation a tutto tondo in all fields enjoyed by Italy and the United States. And now, Fred, the floor is yours.
Good morning to our viewers in the United States. Good afternoon to those particularly in Italy, across Europe, and hello to our viewers across the world. Thank you so much for those opening remarks, Ambassador Verricchio. It's such an honor to work with you. It's been such a productive relationship, and thank you particularly for today's event. I'm honored to welcome you all today to the 160th anniversary celebration of U.S.-Italian diplomatic relations. Aside from thanking Ambassador Verricchio, I also want to salute the staff of the Embassy of the Italian Republic in Washington, as well as Ambassador Masolo, and the Italian Institute for International Political Studies. And the ambassador is also a member of the Atlantic Council's International Advisory Board, so we're proud of that as well. And I also want to thank our Atlantic Council staff for this amazing work. What an honor it is to have Foreign Minister Di Maio with us, and of course, Speaker Pelosi. We are here today both to reflect and reaffirm and reflect on our shared past and reaffirm our collective future. 160 years, Mr. Minister, Mr. Ambassador, Madam Speaker, sounds like a long time. But the relationship, as the ambassador hinted, is a lot longer to that, the very origins of our nation. So just a really brief history lesson. Before 1861, no singular Italian nation existed, so we couldn't have had diplomatic relations before that moment. The Italian peninsula was divided among several smaller states, each of which had established diplomatic relations with the US. For example, and you mentioned Genoa, Mr. Ambassador, the Republic of Genoa officially recognized US independence in 1792. So, Mr. Minister, Mr. Ambassador, Madam Speaker, and next year we can celebrate the 230th anniversary of Genoa officially recognizing US independence. And 5 years after that, we could recognize the establishment of relations with the Papal States in 1797. In short, it's a long history. During the Risorgimento, the smaller states inhabiting the Italian peninsula unified into the Kingdom of Italy, and then the US officially recognized the Kingdom of Italy on April 11th, 1861. So the 160th anniversary 2 days ago. Countless inspiring leaders, daring entrepreneurs, innovative scientific minds, groundbreaking entertainers, and athletes in US history can trace their lineage back to the Italian peninsula. Our histories, our cultures, our futures are interwoven. Citizens in the United States and Italy have both recently witnessed the arrival of new governments. As the Biden and Draghi administrations take office, this timely anniversary brings with it the opportunity to reinvigorate our relationship to tackle common challenges we face. In 2015, the Atlantic Council gave Mario Draghi our highest award, the Global Citizenship Award, while he was at the European Central Bank. It was an event that Vice President Biden attended, as did Henry Kissinger and as did a great many others. Then Vice President Biden talked about Mario Draghi's ability to skillfully handle the most difficult tasks. So the US and Italy can leverage their strong historic ties, but also personal ties to uphold the transatlantic bond and the rules-based international order. Today, we have gathered the foremost leaders in science, technology, business, and diplomacy to discuss the unique connection between our two countries and to shape the global future through innovation and through collaboration. On this anniversary, we have the opportunity to reflect on our shared history, confront the challenges to come, and set a new path forward for both of our countries, and on issues ranging from Afghanistan and Ukraine to climate issues. In closing, I would finally like to thank our audience and all of our speakers for joining us today. Minister DeMaio, Speaker Pelosi, Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council Board, Adrian Arsht, Atlantic Council International Advisory Board member, Secretary Madeleine Albright, among many others. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and insights. And Mr. Ambassador, I too am eager to hear the performance of Maestro Noseda and the National Symphony Orchestra later today. With that, it is my honor to turn the floor to Ambassador Masolo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Mr. Minister DeMaio, dear Ambassador Varricchio, dear President Kemp, dear Fred, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having made possible this celebration. Thank you very much to the Embassy, to the Atlantic Council, also for the choice of doing it together with ISPI. Actually, this is a wonderful occasion to reflect about our rich past, but is as well a strong motivation, a strong incentive to look for a promising future together in the political field, in the economic field, in technology, in people-to-people relations. And actually, I must say that my institute, ISPI, founded in 1934, was very much always interested and very much focused on the relations with the United States. Even during those very gloomy years, the 30s, on the desks of the Milano siege of ISPI, you could find the Anglo-Saxon press, free press. It was impossible to find it elsewhere in Italy. And our first publication, our first book in 1949 was co-authored by then Foreign Minister Carlo Sforza and was about the relations between Italy and the United States. Now, we are working actively on this same avenues. We have a transatlantic relation program. We involve very actively in the United States in the preparation of our Rome Med dialogues. It's our flag event. We actually chair as ISPI now the T20, which is the think tank dimension of the G20, and involving numerous American think tanks. And it's with this kind of people-to-people, institute-to-institute, civil society to civil society cooperation that you create a network of a stable and durable and enforceable relationship. And so I am ready to join Fred next year in the celebration of the establishment of the relations with the Republic of Genoa. And then I'm sure that we will be able to find one year to the other motivations of deep satisfaction and strong links to demonstrate. Thank you very much, and I wish to everybody good works.
Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you, Giampiero, for your remarks. And now back here to Washington, D.C. And ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends, Nia, and joining us through social media, it is my distinct honor to give the floor to the Honorable Luigi Di Maio, Minister of Foreign Affairs of International Cooperation of Italy, who will share his remarks on the political and diplomatic dimension of the U.S.-Italian partnership. This is an important moment for all of us. Minister Di Maio is here in Washington. He's the first foreign dignitary visiting with the administration and later on today with Congress. There couldn't be a more clear sign of the strong and enduring friendship between our two countries that we celebrate today. Minister Di Maio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador Varricchio, distinguished guests, We are here today to celebrate the 160th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations between Italy and the United States of America. Our relations date back to the very birth of Italy as a unified nation. On this day, 160 years ago, U.S. authorities received the dispatch notifying that Vittorio Emanuele II had become King of Italy. Italy and U.S. have a shared history and a common heritage. The same values of democracy, freedom, universal human rights, freedom of religion or belief, the rule of law, open and fair commerce are the foundation of our societies and the guiding light of our international action. Our Atlantic allegiance and our commitment to European integration are rooted in that heritage, and to this day, they continue to represent the axioms of Italy's foreign policy. Centrally in our foreign policy action is our support for multilateralism. As presidency of the G20 and co-presidency of COP26, we are convinced that close multilateral cooperation is the key to tackle today's global challenges. We intend to work in all relevant multilateral fora together with the United States and our partners to raise climate ambition, increase access to vaccines, and promote an economic recovery environmentally and socially sustainable. Italy's commitment to NATO is and remains crucial. As allies, we are resolute in our pledge to protect our collective security, and we work together to maintain international peace and stability. Italy is a global security provider, participating side by side our U.S. allies in security operations in several crisis areas. Under the banner of NATO, UN or EU missions, our defense and police forces provide assistance and security in Afghanistan, Lebanon, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Mali, Niger, as well as in Eastern Europe, the Balkans, the Sahel, the Mediterranean, and the Gulf. Our bilateral defense cooperation also extends to the industrial sector. The collaboration between Italian and American operators is fruitful, and it helps ensuring that our respective defense apparatus remain effective and fit for purpose. Beyond security, our foreign policy cooperation is intense across the board. Our collaboration is particularly close in the Mediterranean region in the framework of the Italy-US strategic dialogue on the broader Mediterranean, which focus on crisis areas, including Libya, defense cooperation, counterterrorism, and energy. Together with the US, we lead the efforts to promote stability in Iraq, and we are on the front line in fighting terrorism through the global coalition to defeat ISIS. I would also like to stress the importance of Italy-US collaboration in the fight against COVID-19. Our relationship ranges from personal protective equipment to tests, from therapies to vaccines. From the first day the pandemic hit Italy, the US have been in close contact with us and supported our efforts to contain the spread and save our population. Our countries are also extremely close trade partners. Our production chains are deeply integrated. Our bilateral economic relations can rely on the strong presence of Italian companies. We are proud of the achievements of our national champions in America, where the global value of Italian investments is close to $33 billion. There are almost 3,000 companies in the US participated by Italian investors, which employ 2,500,000 people. Thanks to them, but also to an extended network of importers and distributors in both countries, before the pandemic, trade in goods and services exceeded $100 billion. For all our main production sectors, mechanics, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, fashion, means of transport, agri-food, furniture, construction, the American market represents a reference point in terms of size, spending capacity, and innovation. This market is essential in any strategy of trade promotion. Let me recall just some of the most iconic names, such as FCA, now Stellantis, and Intesa Sanpaolo, Fincantieri and Leonardo, Ferrero and Barilla, Luxottica and Pirelli, Enel Green Power and Eni. Small and medium enterprises, academia, research centers, startups also contribute to this relationship on a daily basis. Italy is a long-standing partner of the United States in space activities. After the USA and USSR, Italy was the third country in the world to put a satellite into orbit in 1964. Since then, we have been working side by side for over 50 years. Our rich bilateral relations are also driven by extremely fruitful scientific, cultural, and academic exchanges. Italy is among the top destinations for American students. Italian and American scientists, scholars, businessmen, and professionals, many of which we will hear from during the course of this event, have a long history of cooperation. The free flow of intellectual resource and professional expertise is a key driver of our nation's progress, and these individuals are the lifeblood of the Italy-US connection. I also want to mention the Italian-American community in the United States. They represent the rich social fabric that connects the Italian and American people, and their contribution to our bilateral relations is outstanding. We stand in the midst of rapid and profound global changes that are both climate and technology driven. To tackle them, we must rethink our economies and our societies, while keeping the needs and aspirations of our people at the center of our attention. As we embark in the so-called twin transitions, the green transition and the digital transition, Italy-US scientific and technological cooperation can greatly contribute to this endeavor. Our cooperation has reached peaks of excellence in many sectors, such as the life sciences, carbon-free productive processes, artificial intelligence, and robotics, and we seek to boost it further. When it comes to protecting our environment and climate, we are reminded every day of the imperative to make peace with our planet. We commend the Biden administration for rejoining the Paris Agreement, and we look forward to working together towards the milestones ahead. From the Earth Day Summit in Washington to COP50 on biodiversity to COP26 on climate. As presidency of the G20 and co-presidency of COP26, we are keenly aware of the urgent need to expand the global coalition for net zero emissions. Even though the challenges ahead are daunting, I'm convinced that together we can tackle them effectively. As Secretary of State Tony Blinken and I wrote in a recent joint op-ed, in this time of unique global challenges, the strong US-Italy partnership has never been more important. I would like to conclude by quoting Professor Albright, who is here with us today and wrote in her book, The Mighty and the Almighty. Liberty is our gift and our burden, carrying with it both the responsibility to choose and accountability for the choices we make. The question is whether we have the courage of our convictions and the wisdom to make the right choices. It is our duty to shape the future in a way that reflects our principles and values. Italy and the United States can lead the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege to introduce a leader, a model, and a trailblazer for so many young women in the United States, in Italy, and around the globe. A great friend of Italy, proud of her heritage, and twice elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. My friends, please join me in extending a warm bentornata, welcome back, to the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, for special remarks on the friendship between Italy and the United States. Madam Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Fabricio, for your kind introduction and for your years of work to strengthen the partnership between our two nations. As House Speaker, it is my honor to convey the greetings of the U.S. House of Representatives to our Italian friends and to so many friends of Italy. Today, we commemorate the historic bonds between our governments and people, and we commit to charting the next century together. Thank you to our host for providing the opportunity for this celebration, Ambassador Amasolo for the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, long representing Italy around the world, President Kemp, President of the Atlantic Council, a champion of the transatlantic relationship, which is so important to our two countries and beyond, the Italian Embassy. We are so honored by the participation of former Prime Minister Giuliano Amato and Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio. And I look forward to seeing the Foreign Minister later today. This gathering is elevated by the presence of Secretary Madeleine Albright, whom the Foreign Minister quoted so beautifully, a testament to the value of our partnership. The bonds between the U.S. and Italy are embedded in the very roots of the American story. As President Kennedy said 60 years ago at the centennial celebration, all of us, in a large sense, are beneficiaries of the Italian experience, he said. I am proud of saying an Italian discovered our country. Our country is named for an Italian, Amerigo Vespucci, discovered by Columbus, named by Amerigo Vespucci. And again, the Italian peninsula was the birthplace of democratic values that would inspire our founders. As our nation grew, Italian immigrants helped build America with their own hands, from our tallest skyscrapers to our longest railways to our grandest cities. I always like to say also that the first American saint was an Italian saint, Mother Francis Caprini. The first American saint was an Italian. And I, again, serve in a building, the U.S. Capitol, the greatest building, our temple of democracy, inspired by Italians. That a daughter of Italy, that's me, once again occupies the speakership and within the Capitol serves to strengthen the ties between our nations today. I have had the privilege of welcoming President Napolitano, President Mattarella to the Capitol, and to hear their wisdom about how we go into the future together. Now, when our partnership was born a long time ago, 160 years ago, well, I was interested to hear of that that it was Genoa, because my father's family, one of his grandparents was born in Genoa, one in Venice. Of course, the Ligurians are a force in the United States, so they'll take pride in the fact that that was one of the earliest recognitions of each other that we have. But when our partnership was born, America was on the brink of civil war, and Italy was newly unified as a single kingdom. 160 years later, the world looks very different, but our bond is stronger than ever. Foreign Minister listed some of the collaboration that we have done together. We are here to tackle many serious global challenges, the virus, ISIS, the climate crisis, and the rest. And when Italy became an early epicenter, America was pleased to cooperate in helping with emergency assistance to procure medical supplies and support the communities, because that is in the here and now. But we have a broader, we'll get through this, and we have a broader agenda. Our relationships globally center on security. Our nations are proudly collaborating to defend democracy worldwide. Italy has been essential to peacekeeping efforts around the world, offering the largest contribution of soldiers among all developed nations. And we are deeply grateful to Italy for generously hosting more than 30,000 American service members and their families as we work together to promote peace worldwide. I always say when I'm in Italy, the peninsula looks to us in some ways like an aircraft carrier because we have so many security resources there. I visited Aviano, Vincenzo, Naples, and other places to thank our troops for their service, but to thank the Italians for their hospitality and their collaboration. It is interesting to me because I first went, just on a personal note, when I was born, my father was a member of Congress, one of the earliest Italian Americans to serve in Congress, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. When I was a little girl, teenager actually, 13, in the 50s, we visited Italy. He was visiting as a mayor, a syndical, and we went to, of course, to Rome and Florence and Venice and Bologna, where he spoke in the city council, and they said that it was a red city. The Communist Party prevailed there. And of course, we didn't understand what that meant, praying for Russia all the time and ending communism. But again, learning how people got along and respected each other's views in Italy. When we were in Rome, we signed a book that made us honorary citizens of Rome. Can you imagine the excitement? And then years later, when President Kennedy said Civis Romanus Sum was the greatest thing that anyone could ever say. Pretty exciting. That was then, this is now. Our nations look ahead. We must continue to strengthen the friendship and the collaboration so we can build a better future for our children. We must deepen our economic ties, Foreign Minister has gone into in some day, so that we can power a rebuilding and revitalization of the global economy as we recover from crisis. We must, on the security front, bolster NATO, repairing recent, shall we say, misunderstandings, whatever the word might be, and renewing our commitment to transatlantic security. So very, very important, as President Kemp has worked on for so long. And we must preserve the health of our planet by paving the way to a clean energy future with economic and environmental justice for all. On one of my many trips to Italy as a member of Congress and a Speaker of the House and bringing delegations there, on our way to Afghanistan, on our way to Iraq, on our way to other meetings in Europe. On one of those occasions, I had the privilege of working with Prime Minister Amato, and I'm so pleased that he's part of what's going on today, because we learned so much from him really early on about the challenge of climate change, and I appreciate his leadership in that regard. So it's about security, it's about economy, it's about saving our planet, and as always, we must continue to be vanguards for our values around the world, advancing the causes of freedom, justice, and peace. As President Kennedy stated in his centennial address, the Risorgimento was the reawakening of the most deeply held ideals of Western civilization. 160 years later, our shared values continue to be a beacon for the world and a foundation of our friendship. 10 years ago, I had the privilege of bringing a bipartisan delegation to Italy for the 150th anniversary. And then, as now, music was central to the celebration. In the Chamber of Deputies, where I had the privilege of bringing the delegation and observing the celebration, we were, shall we say, entertained by Maestro Muti at that time, and now this year, Maestro Noseda, following that beautiful tradition of Italian music. which is a very unifying. And that Mother Caprini, when she came to America and was trying to help the Italian immigrants here, and actually our whole society, one thing she found was Americans loved Italian opera, so she used that as one of her draws to get support for her hospitals and the rest. So the arts are always unifying. We forget our differences. We have our shared enjoyment, inspired, laughing, crying, but again, forgetting our differences, and that's a very important thing. So again, at this time, we have, again, all these years later, I've said before to some of you, when President Kennedy sent his message on the 100th anniversary, he wrote in the margins his own notes about how he specifically wanted clarity in that message. And now, what more clarity could we have about the importance of our relationship than to have a First Lady of Italian-American heritage, Jill Biden? She makes us all so proud in so very many ways, including the pride that she takes in Italian-American heritage. Pride and heritage is important for what it means to you, but it also is the source of strength to recognize the pride that others take in their heritage. That respect we all have for our own heritage is really is a strength to say, I know how important my heritage is to me. I know how important your heritage is to you. In our country of such diversity, that's so important. Let me end with one story about the friendship between our two countries. One of the first gestures from the newly unified Italian nation toward America was the gift of a stone from the Serbian wall, sent in mourning upon President Lincoln's assassination. The gift was intended to link two great leaders who devoted their lives to securing freedom and peace in their time. Serbius Julius, who expanded voting rights across ancient Rome, Abraham Lincoln, who ended slavery and rescued our democracy. Today, that stone lies on Lincoln's final resting place, an enduring reminder of our shared values, common history, and intertwined faith, and an inspiration as we move forward into a future together. I have so much to be grateful to Italy, to be grateful for my own heritage, my family, the pride we take. But I also want to acknowledge that after 9/11, the Italian government established a memorial in Rome. And what did they use but ancient pillars from ancient Rome, again, with the commemoration of friendship to all of us in our time of grief in the United States. I always love seeing that when I go back to Rome. So thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts about the pride we take, about the wonderful contribution Italian Americans have made to America in so many ways. Now it is my honor to introduce one of our hosts. You've heard from him earlier, you'll hear from him again, President Frederick Kemp, who has long been a defender of diplomacy and democratic freedoms in his important role as president of the Atlantic Charter, which is the Atlantic Council, which is very important to our relationship. Frederick, Mr. President, the floor is yours. As I depart, I say, Viva Italia, God bless America. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Ambassador, again, for your tremendous leadership in strengthening the relationship between Bella Italia and the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for your passionate, thoughtful remarks. I also appreciate your quoting of President Kennedy when saying, Romanus sum. This is a testimony of the importance of history. A young nation like Italy, born under 6 years ago, but an old country, retracing her roots in a very old civilization. I also did appreciate your remarks about the importance of Congress. Congress, where elected officials sit, really represent the soul of a nation. And these were the friendship between Italy and the United States as a special role. Thank you very much. And now the program goes on. I hand over the baton to Maestro Fred Kemp. Fred, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your powerful and personal remarks. Grazie mille. And thank you, Mr. Minister Di Maio, as well. I'm honored to introduce our first discussion of the day, reflecting on 160 years of U.S.-Italy diplomatic relations and looking forward to our next century together. First, I'm delighted to introduce Secretary Madeleine Albright, the 64th United States Secretary of State and the 20th United States Ambassador to the United Nations. She is chair of the Albright Stonebridge Group and a member of the Atlantic Council International Advisory Board. I'm next delighted to introduce former Prime Minister Giuliano Amato, who served as Prime Minister of Italy from 1992 to 93 and again 2000-2001. He's currently the Vice President of the Constitutional Court of Italy, an honorary president of the Center for American Studies. Secretary Albright, Prime Minister Amato, we're honored that both of you can join us today for this important anniversary celebration. And I cannot think of two more fitting individuals to have this discussion. I'll now turn the floor over to my friend and colleague, Anita Mcbride, who serves as executive in residence at the Center for Congressional and Presidential Studies at American University School of Public Affairs and vice chair of the National Italian-American Foundation. Thank you again, all of you, for joining us across Europe, in the United States, and elsewhere. Anita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Fred. Buongiorno tutti. I'm honored and delighted to participate in this conversation today, which has already been so robust. And I want to thank the Atlantic Council and, of course, Ambassador Verricchio and Ambassador Masolo, the host of today's important conversation. 5 years ago, within days of Ambassador Verricchio's arrival to his new post here in Washington, the Embassy of Italy, along with the National Italian-American Foundation and the White House Historical Association, hosted an international symposium that examined the influence of Italy and the Roman Republic on the White House, and more broadly on America's founders as they were forming a new nation. The historical perspective of the American-Italian relationship and the ongoing reciprocal, mutually beneficial diplomatic ties that bind these two nations were examined, as well as the personal bonds between U.S. and Italian leaders. This celebration we recognize today comes during a time of transition for both nations. The United States and Italy each have new administrations. This is a time to reflect and to look ahead. And I'd like to start now by asking our two distinguished panelists these questions. What do you see as the key priorities for the U.S.-Italy partnership and the transatlantic relationship more broadly? And how can the United States and Italy leverage their historic ties to address challenges and maximize the opportunities in front of us? Madam Secretary, I'd like to start with you.
Well, thank you very, very much. And I'm really honored to be a part of this important discussion on this important anniversary. Let me just say that there is no more important time for the Italo-American relationship to prosper, because there are issues out there that were not handled, I think, in the best way recently. And we now have two new governments that really do want to look at what we can do together in order to deal with the major issues. And I was very interested that both the ambassador and the foreign minister did speak about the issue of climate and the kinds of things that we need to do together. President Biden has made that very clear. And Italy's leadership role with COP and also with the G20 is very, very important. And so I do think that is the major crisis that is out there. And we are united in the way that we have to deal with that. That is also true in terms of dealing with the virus. I do think, by the way, I am also an immigrant. I was born in Europe. And so I always think of myself as the epitome of the Euro-Atlantic relationship. And it has been one that has been so key, and it needs to be in many ways reinforced in terms of the important things that we have in common and have to be able to work together to solve. And that's why celebrating this anniversary, not only with a look back, but also a look forward. And I really look forward to this discussion with the Prime Minister and you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Prime Minister?
Well, what can I tell you? First of all, let me express in a personal note my enjoyment of being here with Madeleine Albright. I don't know whether she still remembers that one of the last times we met in the 90s, several years ago, in a dinner in Venice, she was close to my grandchild, who was 6 years old at the time, and they had a continuous conversation. I couldn't get the language of this conversation, but they had a lot of things to say to each other, so I'm still impressed for that. Well, let me be very frank and sincere. The main job of these two countries together is to demonstrate that the notion of the West is not obsolete, that it makes sense for us to stay together in the West, despite the difficulties we currently have. Of course, we can't think of preserving it as it was in the golden years of the Atlantic Alliance. It was a different world, of course. But nowadays, we have to admit, we have external difficulties, China, the increasing economic, perhaps even military, certain technological power of China, the increasing role of authoritarian regimes, mostly in Asia, but not only. So what the West means in terms of value in a future world, where also in demographic terms, we will be fewer than we are now. So it will be much more important to be united. But not only, we have to admit that we also have domestic difficulties in preserving the policies that we shared, let's say at the times of President Obama, the Trans-Pacific partnership of the world with free trade, etc. A friend of mine, Jan Bremmer, wrote 2 days ago that nowadays not only the Americans loyal to the former president, but several others think that the policies of free trade of China in the WTO benefited only the top 1% and were damaging the lower and middle class in the States. So the great problem now that the new president has is to remain loyal to the foreign policies of the America he represents also culturally, but also to make it acceptable for the middle classes, which is quite a difficult job. While in Europe, at the same time, now the Europeans are somehow working around the notion of strategic autonomy. Let me say that I don't like it. I see a lot of ambiguity in it. I understand that there are areas, issues upon which we have to have autonomy, in the sense that we have to have productions that might be strategic for the future, such as masks in the case of the pandemic, for instance. But it's not strategic autonomy dividing the West, playing a different game, staying on this side and at the same time on the other side. It can't work like this. Italy has always been aware that being European also means being close to the US and fine-tuning the policies of these two areas. So for the future, in terms of values, in terms of economic potential, in terms of technologies, in terms of financial assets, Europe plus the US can widely compensate the relative weakness of both vis-à-vis the past. So we have to stay together. And I expect Italy to be a front runner in Europe for the reinvigoration of the notion of the West.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I appreciate that, giving that context of the very broad relationship between our two countries and the importance of upholding the values of the West. And so I'd like to ask both of you now, with this period of transition, new leaders in both of our countries, Prime Minister Draghi and President Biden, both have a wealth of experience, although of course the experience is different. What will the experience of these leaders mean for the U.S.-Italy partnership, and more broadly, the value and the importance of the transatlantic relationship and the influence of international institutions? Madam Secretary, will you take that first?
Yes. Well, first of all, I do think that we are lucky, both countries, to have such remarkable leaders at this time, because they both have very exceptional background and history. And what I find interesting, and I think it will be interesting to explore this, is they have different backgrounds in terms of Prime Minister Draghi being somebody that is very well versed in economics and business and central ways that the international system can work economically. And President Biden is somebody who has had a great deal of political experience, and also on his time on the Foreign Relations Committee. I know him quite well, and we spent quite a lot of time dealing with European issues, an awful lot of them to do with the Balkans, which I think we'll probably talk about. But having the experience and having it also be somewhat different, I think is going to be very important. I would like to pick up on something that the Prime Minister now just said. By the way, I remember my conversation with your and I'm always looking at the next generation. So please remember me anyway. And being with you and all the different things that I was able to do on my variety of visits to Italy. But I think that one of the issues is this fact that all of a sudden some Europeans want to have a separate identity. And I think that that is not something that is important at the moment, and that Italy can be the country that really is the link, the America's best friend in Europe, if I could put it that way, in terms of being able to interpret us to the Europeans and the Europeans to us, and really playing that role of being the one that, as the Prime Minister has said, can explain where we've come from and where we're going. Because I do think that there are doubts among some Americans about how the Europeans are going to behave. And there clearly are doubts among Europeans about where we're going. And while we have to look back, we do have to look at some of the future issues. And having Italy really be the hand out there that can explain, that is able to work through the economic issues and the climate issues and the strategic issues in terms of how we deal with the Middle East, how we deal, as was mentioned, the rising China, and just generally in the world. So I look forward to a time where we translate a lot of the mottos that we've now expressed, as the Speaker Pelosi also said, that have been the hallmarks of our relationship, in a way to use all that to deal with the problems of the future, because there are issues about where the West is, and there are issues about how authoritarianism is spreading. And by the way, it is taking place in Europe, not very far from Italy. You know, I'm very concerned about some of the things that are going on in Hungary and in Poland, and kind of watching what is going on in Europe also. So there's a lot to talk about. And I hope also that we are able to spend some time thinking about how we can partner on issues to do with the Mediterranean, as was mentioned, because it has so many impacts in terms of how we all operate internationally. So I would just make clear that I hope very much that our two leaders, with the background that they have, can understand that Italy and the United States need to work together as we look at what the issues are coming forward, that it is that explanation that we can give to each other about each other's habits and our history.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Prime Minister, I know that you have a hard stop with us, so I would like to ask you if you have any response to this question.
I basically agree with what Madeleine has just said. Let me add, your question was about also the two leaders,
right?
Their experiences, etc., whether they will work easily together. Well, I would say that we are lucky, because the same, if not the same age, they are very close in terms of age, both over 70s, which means with similar experiences. They lived the same world year after year. So what they saw when they were young was basically the same word. What they are seeing now is more or less the same word. Second, there is an experience that Mario Draghi has, his last one, important, as president of the European Central Bank. It's an incredibly valuable training in working with others and succeeding in creating consensus in a complex body representing several countries and several views. Can you understand? This is the bulk of multilateralism, because several of our leaders have always said, I'm for multilateralism, etc., but they don't know how to handle themselves in multilateral bodies where different opinions are expressed, where sooner or later you have to create a consensus around the issues that are discussed. Now, we understand that after years of let's stay far away from multilateralism, now we are going back to it. We are going back to the Paris Agreement. We are going back to the WTO. We are going back to arenas where it's nice to talk to each other, but it's difficult to find the final agreement that also is a decision improving the world. And in terms of climate change, we need the consensus of all of the members of the human community, and we have to somehow smooth the differences and the distances among different interests. Now, the experience that Mario Draghi has is something of great value for this kind of exercise. A man like Biden, who worked years ago with most of the countries of the world, now these two men together represent an asset that the West has to solve disputes. They will have their problems to solve, unifying the foreign policy of Europe. Let me say that Western Europe has a view on Russia. Our Eastern European brothers have an understandably different view. Nobody has succeeded up to now in creating a common ground between these views. Can you bet that these two men together might try to do it, and they may also succeed.
Do both of you, one last question, do both of you see that issue, the influence of China, the influence of Russia, not only in Europe, but as you mentioned, Madam Secretary, in Africa, do you see that as their greatest priority and challenge, containing the influence of Beijing in Europe?
I do think that everybody is worried about what the Chinese are doing in terms of creating economic dependency by some countries on them. And so we are concerned about that. And we're obviously also concerned about Russia and the kind of interference in our democratic processes. And I think that there will be a focus on that. And that is why I think the US-European relationship is so important. Because while there are times we may disagree and have disagreed, our basic value system is similar. And so that cooperation, I think, is very important. I know some of my European friends, when President Obama was rebalancing towards Asia, said, "You've forgotten us." And I said, "No, we have not. You used to be the problem. You are now the solution, and we have to work together." And I think that there will be a lot of action on that, which is why, to return to the point here, is the US-Italian relationship can be absolutely central to that. And that's what I hope will be a way of being able to deal with the threats that come from Chinese approach to things, the Belt and Road activity, and the Russian penetration in terms of our democratic systems through a variety of techniques that are more in memory of how the KGB operates.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. A brief last word from you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Very short. I mean, I have nothing against China growing and becoming a great country. I mean, I have a great admiration for a government that has succeeded in feeding more than 1 billion citizens, and it seemed impossible years ago. So, chapeau, I say. But for you to become great does not mean that you have to interfere with me and somehow to endanger my security. These are the two main points that we have with China. I'm ready to cooperate with China on any area and on any ground. But I have to be sure, first, that if my companies cooperate with their companies, my national security is not at risk. Why nowadays it is, because any Chinese company is obliged to transmit to its government any information it gets by cooperating with others. This system is not acceptable. Second, you can't use economic aids continuously to create a political influence in areas that somehow belong to us more than to you. It's not the Monroe Doctrine, it's not that. But I mean, there is a limit. And I said it openly to Chinese friends times ago. The last word, of course, if we want to reduce their influence in the world, we have to be more proactive in the saying word. Africa is there. If they conquer Africa, is because we don't do enough there.
Yeah. Thank you, both of you. This was a tremendously important, valuable conversation, sharing your expertise and vast knowledge with our audience and on the strength of the US-Italy relationship, the transatlantic relationship, of course. And so again, I want to thank you both. This has been a terrific conversation. I know we're going to go into a pause right now for a moment before Ambassador Masolo comes back to introduce the second panel. Thank you. Grazie tutti.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
Ciao.
So again, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Here, welcome to our second panel of this celebration, the 160th anniversary of US-Italy establishing diplomatic relations. I was saying in my introductory remarks that the two countries share a rich past and that they have a promising future in their relationship. And what better way of enhancing relations, building lasting ties than building our future together? And this is about civil society to civil society. It's about economy to economy, business to business, technology to technology. And this is exactly what will be dealt with in our second panel. And let me just outline shortly two things that strike me. One is the business title of one of the panelists, Dr. Clancy, the chief futurist. Well, what a better omen for our future than having a chief futurist with us. And the second one is that I see my good friend Emma Marcegaglia here on the panel, and Emma is chairing the B20, which is the business gathering of the G20 that Italy chairs this year. And we are colleagues because actually she is the B20 leader and the T20 leader, the T20, the G20 of the think tanks. So strategic perspective and operational level, business level, working together. Once again, what a better omen for our future. So please enjoy our second panel. And Giovanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Massolo. Thank you to the Atlantic Council. Thank you to ISPI, to the Italian Embassy in the US for organizing this important event. I'm very pleased and honored to moderate this panel, which you'll see has incredible and high-level speakers, but I'm also very honored because this day celebrate actually the friendship and alliance between the two countries that in the past 4 years I called home, so Italy and the US. And I'm very pleased to be part of this celebration today. But, you were saying the issue that we're gonna try to focus on today in our hour together, it's very interesting because it's not just focusing on the present, but it's focusing on the future. So it's very challenging from one point of view. And we are gonna talk about the future with the Ambassador Karambatia, which is the Vice President and Government Affairs and Public Policy for Google. Dr. Charles Clancy, of course, it was already somehow introduced by Ambassador Massolo, is the Senior Vice President General Manager for Maitri Labs, but also the Chief Futurist for Maitri Corporation. And then Emma Marcegaglia, which is the Chair of Business 20, and Dr. Francesca Rossi, which is one of the major experts on artificial intelligence, but is also the AI ethics global leader for IBM. And I'm gonna move soon to the questions because we want to be very strict with time since we have a great concert just after us that I'm sure all of you want to follow. So I would like to ask with a general question for all the speakers about the strengths in the US-Italy partnership and how can those strengths be even more harnessed to build a more prosperous and sustainable future for the United States and Italy. And in particular, what role can technology and innovation play in the future of the economic and business relationship between Italy and the US? I would like to start with Ambassador Batia.
Thanks, Giovanna, and thanks so much for including me in this exciting day and panel. The partnership between the U.S. and Italy has been one founded on common values, on trade, but it is exciting to see how its focus now, I think, is increasingly innovation and technology. At Google, our experience in Italy goes back to near the founding of the company. We opened one of our first international offices in Milan a few years after the company was created back in 2001 and have expanded subsequently. And we really see Italy as being a exciting market, exciting partner. And we'd like to see ourselves as an enabler and a partner to Italy in that process. I think in terms of areas of focus and cooperation, I'd flag three for you, ones that we're seeing at least. One is partnerships between large companies looking to enhance core digital infrastructure. I think the second is small and medium-sized enterprises, which are so key to both. And lastly would be working on people, on skilling people. Just to touch on each one of these really quickly, at Google, last year we announced the launch of 2 big new cloud regions. For us, this is a big deal. Investment of $900 million in Italy over the next 5 years. And as part of that, are building partnerships with great Italian companies like Telecom Italia, like Banco Intesa. So we see that sort of core infrastructure developing, really leading some transformative partnerships. On the SME side, look, Italy is famous for its small and medium-sized enterprises. And I think digital technology, the internet, has been such an enabler for Italian SMEs to be able to connect with the world. And we just see that continuing to grow, whether it's small companies exporting, whether it's great Italian creative talent on YouTube or app developers. We're excited that right now, as we speak in Italy, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is actually working with us to launch a significant event which will enable Italian SMEs to export more online, which is exciting. And then lastly, all of this isn't going to work if people don't have the core skill sets to be connected online and in this new innovative world. So I think this is a joint responsibility of government and of the private sector. We're very proud to be working to help train more than 200,000 people and businesses in Italy, but there's a lot more to be done in that space as well. So writ large, an exciting future to build off a pretty dynamic last few years.
Thank you, Ambassador Biden. Dr. Rossi, what do you think about the strengths in the U.S.-Italy partnership and relationship, and what can be done even more when it comes to the tech sector?
Yes, well, I mean, I need to repeat, of course, follow up what was said by Ambassador Bhatia, because of course the strength is the shared values. That's the main strength, shared values, shared culture for innovation, for discovery, for creativity. So this is 2 traits. There are traits that are really common, and I see in my everyday life here, at IBM in New York, so I see that really every day, so much of the Italian culture here shaping also and influencing also what happens in the United States. So that's very, very important because as was said, here we are trying to build the future, but we are trying to build the correct future, the future that we really want based on those shared values. So the pandemic has shown us that, yes, the future is important. Technology is essential to solve very difficult problems, but it has to be done with care, for shared values, and which are human-centric. So, and that coincidence of these values between the US and Italy is really important. And I think I really liked what Secretary Albright said a few minutes ago in her speech, saying that Italy can really be the link between Europe and US by such shared, values, these 2 countries. I also agree with what Ambassador Bhatia said about the fact that this future it needs to be built based on sustainable growth, which needs both technology and correctly trained people with the right skills. So the technology is not that we are using, and we will speak later maybe more about artificial intelligence, but in general, the technology is not a neutral thing. It is also the way it is designed, it is developed, then not just the way it is used. So it's important that it is developed in the right way with the right values. So it's a future built on technology, where technology is central to make the right decision. And in order to make the right decision, again, we don't just need the technology, the right technology, but we also need it to be based on the right values. So that's why the sharing of values is so crucial.
So, Mrs. Marcegaglia, do you agree with Ambassador Bhatia and Dr. Rossi that actually, one of the main strengths of the Italian-American relationship is this common and shared values that we do have, also in the way in which we want to tackle business and to imagine it and to vision the future. Mrs. Marjagaglia?
Could you hear me? Could you hear me?
Now, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So no, I said that I totally agree with Ms. Rossi saying that, share value is at the core of our relationship, also of our history. We're talking about history, values, culture. So that's very important. And this is also at the base of our relationship. Minister Di Maio has said already that there is already a very strong economic partnership between our two countries. We are talking about more than 100 billion import-export between us. I want to underline that the US represent for Italy the largest non-EU export markets, where we export high-value sectors, products like vehicles, machinery, pharmaceutical, and others. And the US represent the third largest importing markets, with also here pharmaceutical at the core, aircraft and machinery. So we are starting from already a very strong relationship. I want to underline that if we now want to go through a recovery but that is more inclusive and more sustainable, I think we also should work more together. Of course, on innovation and technology, I will say something on that. But I would like also to underline that we should also work together on climate sustainability. And let me say that on sustainability, Italy is a strong power. Italy is very strong in circular economy, where we have a recycling of total waste of 79%, much higher than European countries. We have 400,000 Italian companies that invested in green products and technology. This is important. And also Italy ranks second among the worldwide exporters of technological advanced green products. And also, for example, in agriculture, we are very strong in sustainable agriculture. So I think we can work more on this part. This is interesting. And let me also say that on technology, I agree on what has been said. Of course, US is a superpower on artificial intelligence platform, everything. But Italy is improving a lot. And I think that we should work together, Italy and US, on shared values, as you said, but also, for example, on new standards. On critical technologies, on develop also innovation, corporate, on also develop cyber security capacity building, skills. So what I want to say is that we are already very strong partner, but we have to work together for the future on a sustainable economy and also on skill, innovation and technology.
So Dr. Clancy, now it's up to you, but since, we were saying you are our, main master of the future, since it's exactly what do you do every day for Maitri, I will also ask you, how do you see actually the future of transatlantic and US-Italian collaboration when it comes to new technology, but also to some of the threats that new technology can imply?
Yeah, so unfortunately, my job as a chief futurist does not come with a crystal ball. It might make it a bit easier because, technology is moving at exponential pace, right? So every year, the pace of innovation exceeds the year that came before it. And so as we see this tremendous growth in innovation, really fueled by a global innovation economy, it's changing the dynamics of global economics, right? We've seen the rise of China as a major peer in the space. And I think it took many by surprise, particularly in the telecommunications sector, where China became much more quickly than expected and perhaps a bit surprisingly a global leader in technologies like 5G. And so I think that that focus on shared values really is critical as we contemplate the future, because I think not all innovators in the world have the same shared values. And as Secretary Albright mentioned, we are seeing an increase in authoritarianism and autocracies globally. And in some cases, the emerging technology that holds so much promise for our economic future also can be a tool for those regimes, either an economic tool or a tool to undermine civil rights and civil liberties and human rights. So I think as we think about our shared values and look forward, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening with the new administration here in the United States. We have talk of kind of recasting our transatlantic alliances around sort of shared economic and technology interests, more so than purely shared military interests. And I think that gets very exciting as I think about the future of a partnership between the US and Italy.
And indeed, talking also about the threats, how, according to you, Italy and the US can cooperate to tackle and, to try to find the right solution for these threats? Also, when it comes to, geopolitical threats that you were talking about.
Certainly, right. So I think a perfect example would be where we are in the telecommunications sector today. We have spent the last probably 3 years really developing and at least partially deploying 5G mobile technology. And the US and Italy were a kind of key ally there in sort of moderating the sort of Chinese deployment of their equipment into Europe, which again is when you think about the sort of macroeconomics of technology competitiveness, that was kind of a key battleground for the last few years. But the fight is far from over, right? I think we're looking now at the very early emergence of 6G, right? I know most people still perhaps have not yet bought a 5G cell phone, and we're already talking about 6G. But indeed, the European Commission has already put together a major program to invest in both academia and industry in 6G, trying to understand the technologies that will be involved. What new things will it do, right? We don't even really know what 5G is going to bring to our economies, much less 6G. But as a chief futurist, it gets really interesting to think about what might be possible with even further extensions of ubiquitous global connectivity. Similarly, the United States has kicked off an initiative with our standards organizations. And I think there's that's just one example of an opportunity to collaborate on really building a future in the telecommunications space that we feel is representative of our shared values. And I think we're also at an inflection point where not doing so could be pretty serious, right? We're seeing through the Belt and Road Initiative that China is undertaking, increasing balkanization of the internet. We have 2 internets emerging. We have 2 social media ecosystems emerging, one built over the digital Silk Road and those built by the West. And I think right now is the time to increase collaboration to ensure that the values we want to see in the future of our technology are part of that future internet.
Thank you very much. One of the good things of talking about the future is that in the past year, all of us, we are focusing a lot on the present, and the present is not always a good one. We are facing a pandemic, we are facing a social and economic crisis worldwide. And that's why I really think that it's important sometimes to look a little bit ahead and to talk about solutions. And talking about that, Mrs. Marcegaglia, given also your vast experience as a global businesswoman and business leader, right now, there is a big discussion all over about, what is going to be business after COVID, what is going to be the global economy after COVID. There is something, according to you, that is missing in this conversation, and how will business adapt actually to a post-pandemic world?
Well, of course, we are already talking about the most important point. What I think is very important is that, we have to have in mind that, as I said before, we want to go back to growth, but it's clear to all of us that the growth has to be more inclusive and more sustainable. This is very clear. I think that for business, this means that, of course, we have to very clear that our companies has to be very competitive. Otherwise, you cannot stay in the market. But on the other hand, I think we have to take responsibility. We have to have some commitment on how to solve the big problems that we have ahead of us. So, business has a very important role to solve the problems. And think about climate change. I talked about that before. Also in the B20, we are talking a lot on that. And I think we should really get to, for example, a carbon pricing, a worldwide carbon pricing. We need to have, a lot of the company invest in new technology, in breakthrough technology, together with, university and what. So I think it's very important to recognize the role of business in what is going on in the, let's say, in the economy from pandemic. I think it's very important to understand that we need also to include more. As I said before, I want to make an example. We all know that the big loser in the pandemic has been young people from one side and women from the other side. In the US, where, the labor market is very flexible, women have been strongly penalized. So I think we should all have a very strong focus on women empowerment, which I think is not only an ethical point, but probably is the most powerful way to enhance global recovery all over the world. And the last thing I want to underline is that I hope this will not happen, but probably in the next future, we will have also to face other emergency, maybe health emergency, but cybersecurity emergency, migration, climate change, emergency. So I think it's very important that the different governments, but also public and private, work together to face and to be prepared if we have to experiment new emergencies and not find ourselves in a situation where we don't know what to do and have a lot of loss in lives, loss on, in economy, and loss in jobs.
Yes, of course, being prepared is always, one of the main things that everyone should try to do. And talking about a more near future, you are also the chair, Mrs. Marciagali, of Business 20, and of course, Italy has the presidency of the G20 this year. So, what would you like to achieve with the B20 this year? What you would consider as a success at the end of the year if you manage to do it? With the
yes,
B20.
First of all, let me say that there is a lot of interest by all the business corporates from all over the world, and the Americans are very, are working with us in a very strong way in our B20. As I said, I think we want to be very pragmatic, very concrete. We don't want to get to very nice papers where you talk about everything, but we would like to get, to give to the head of state very concrete examples and recommendations. The first, as I said, we would like to see, a carbon price all over the world, because climate change is a very serious problem. But we have to, to have clear signals from the governments if we want really to have technology investment to go there. We agree on the fact that we should have a level playing field in terms of tax, in terms of standard. And I really appreciate what the new administration, the U.S. administration, the position on, on tax on that. We would like also to, to work a lot on digital, as it has been said, because this is very important. So, there are a lot of things. The important things is to be concrete, to be pragmatic, and to underline once again that the role of business to solve the problems is very important. So we have to take responsibility, but also we would like to be heard by the government, because we think that our experience of the market can be very helpful to solve the problems that we see on the market and in the world.
And talking a little bit more about going back, let's say, to the relationship between US and Italy, most American investors, when they thinks about Italian business or Italian industry, they tend to focus on maybe fashion, luxury, food. But actually, Mrs. Marciagali, could you tell us which are the sector that maybe American investor doesn't think about it, but actually are developing very well in Italy right now?
Yeah, well, thank you for this opportunity, because, as you said, Italy is the land of beauty, is the land of culture, but Italy is also a very strong leader in manufacturing. Don't forget that Italy is the second European manufacturing country. Italy is the 7th manufacturing country in the world. And if you look, for example, at what is called Trade Performance Index, this is an index made by the WTO and the UN that underline what is the competitiveness of exports of the different countries. Well, it's very interesting to say that after Germany, Italy is the second most competitive exporter in the world. And we are not only first, as you said, in textile and all this part, but we are first, we are second, for example, in the mechanical. We are second in the electronics in some time. We are very important also in white goods. And we are getting stronger also in automation and robots. So this is very interesting to say that we are already very strong in manufacturing, but it's also important to know that we have a leadership also in what are the let's say the future of the industry. So automation, mechanical, and also robots. So we want to get better because, of course, there is a lot to do. But I'm very happy to say to the Americans that Italy is not only the end of beauty, but it's a very strong leader on the industrial sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ambassador Bhatia, as you were saying to us in your introductory remarks, actually Google knows very well that Italy could be, a potential land of opportunity, not just linked to the classical industry that one can think about it, since Google is investing and is planning to investing in Italy even more in the future. But I would like to go back a little bit to the pandemic world, because of course, all of us in the past year really understood even more how much tech company can do in our everyday life. And you gave us solutions to problems that we didn't even think we had before 2020. And so I would like to ask you, which are at this point the roles that tech company and Google will continue to play also after the pandemic and even more in the economic recovery?
Thanks, Giovanna. Yeah, it has been a remarkable last year on so many fronts. And obviously our hearts go out to this, many millions of people who've been impacted by the pandemic so personally. But from a technology adoption standpoint, it has been a significant step forward. And we see this across jurisdictions, across sectors. And frankly, we don't think the world is necessarily going back to where it was before. Everything from e-commerce to these kinds of sessions that we are now doing so routinely, we think is likely to stay with us. As we think at Google about sort of how we can contribute to the ongoing adoption of technology that will allow all of us to be more connected, to live better lives, I think we think about it in a few categories. I think the first, and to some extent this reflects sort of what our experience has been over the last 12 months, the first core thing, it continues to be getting people information. You think back to March of last year, April of last year, and how desperately people were looking for real-time information about the disease, about how to get treated, about what to do. At Google, our core mission is to make the world's information universally accessible, and making it accessible, I think, in ways that previously might not have been so obvious. So how do we structure information? How do we get it to people? How do we partner with governments and international institutions to help make sure authoritative information flows forward? So we've had some terrific partnerships with the Italian government, for instance, on this, but I think you're going to see more of that focus going forward. I think the second area I'd flag is new technology products. And I'll just sort of mention two areas here. One is contact tracing. So this was not something that we at Google had done before, but in the wake of the pandemic, we partnered with Apple, which is traditionally a great competitor of ours, to come up with a common API to allow the adoption of mobile handset-based contact tracing, which is much more effective, we think, over the long run. We're very pleased with the partnership we had, for instance, with the Italian government, where they were one of the first countries, the first major EU country actually to adopt that technology with the Italian contact tracing app, Immuni. So that's one space. The other, which we've, and I know Francesca's on, will have thoughts about this as well. Artificial intelligence, I think, which continues to be such a driver of technology growth, also got a shot in the arm, pardon the pun, through COVID-19, whether it's work that's now being done on medical imaging or predicting virus structures. So there was a lot of important work that's happened there that I think we're going to continue to see grow. So growth of information, growth of new products, and then the last thing I would just say is growth of new business models. So some of this gets back to what I was talking about in terms of connecting small and medium-sized enterprises more, sustainability and the enhancement, sort of a sustainable business focus in the context of COVID-19. Trying to think through how can businesses withstand and adapt to potentially new disruptions in their business models. So look, it's as different as today is from a year ago. We think we're going to continue to see the evolution of real innovation in business model structures going forward. And we're excited about that and see Italy as being a great partner in that.
And indeed, when we think about innovation, when we want to see innovation, also investment has to come along. And so I would like to ask you how the United States and Italy, as well the European Union, not just Italy, can help to encourage investment on the tech industry and the tech companies. And also on this behalf, do you think that, there is a way in which the United States and the European Union can ensure that maybe policy differences or difference in the interpretation of digital sovereignty, for instance, can somehow jeopardize the innovation effort?
Well, look, I think it's always the case that business innovation does best where there is regulatory certainty and where there's regulatory alignment. And traditionally, the US and Europe have actually, based in large part on what we started talking about, common values, had similar approaches to regulation writ large. Obviously, there's always been differences. We are concerned, I think, that in recent years, we saw less collaboration. We've seen less alignment, and we've seen both the US and Europe proceed on somewhat unilateral paths, and collaboration and coordination, particularly on challenging regulatory issues like those, novel regulatory issues like those that are presented by the technology sector, has been less robust than we would like to have seen. And I think it's been to the detriment of the US and US consumers and companies, and also European consumers and companies. So we were delighted to see the European Commission recently propose the idea of a US-EU Trade and Technology Council. We've called for that offer to be accepted and built upon by the new Biden administration. We would love to see a high level, quick, expedited trade dialogue on technology issues, which I think is really important. And there are a number of pressing issues right now that are right at the forefront, things like data flows or taxation issues, regulation of platforms. I think all of these are important. We understand the need for those discussions, but it is so critical that they happen in a coordinated way where both sides are talking before they are acting unilaterally. So we think that's important. And obviously Italy, with its leadership role in Europe, its leadership role in the G20, we think can play an important constructive role in that.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So Dr. Rossi, talking more about artificial intelligence, which is one side, of course, of new technology, but it's also one of this part that, all of us think is gonna really change the world in the future. So I would like to ask you if, according to you, there is still some potential stronger cooperation between US and Italy when it comes to artificial intelligence, and specifically, what are you doing in this behalf on IBM?
Yeah, so, well, first, let's try to understand what AI can do for us, for the society, for people. No? So the goal of the technology is really to help humanity shape the future in a way that humans are at the center and not the technology itself. So the goal is to improve ourselves through the technology, of course. And AI really is central at this point, because now we see that we are in a situation where we need to make very difficult decisions for global challenges, whether it's a pandemic or another emergency or the economic situation or the climate issues. So, and these decisions, of course, needs to be made based on data. And we are surrounded by huge amounts of data. So that's the strength of AI, that can make sense of these huge amounts of data in order to help people make better decisions. And this is what, I think that's the role of AI. This is what we are we are putting together at IBM with a very long history of using technology in that way, almost as long as the US-Italian relationship, because IBM is 110 years old. But once you use this technology, like AI, to make grounded and more optimal decisions to very difficult problems, you realize that, as I said earlier, you need to base these decisions also on values. What are the values that you want to give to this technology? And so what we focused on, and many other people around the world, many other entities, is to build an ecosystem of trust around the technology. So not just the technology itself that should have certain properties like fairness, inclusion, explainability, transparency, robustness, respect for privacy, and so on, but also trust in the whole ecosystem, the tech producers, the regulators, those that build the standards, all the various voices around this technology. So that's what we work a lot internally, with our own AI ethics board and all the other activities internally, to make sure that the technology we deliver to other companies, because that's our business model, has the right properties and is built into this ecosystem of trust. But then once you do that, you realize that the challenges are so global that no single company or no single state can solve it or address it by itself. And that's why we really value a lot partnerships between companies, of course, but also with all the stakeholders. And the partnership between US and Italy is fundamental here because really, as I said earlier, the shared values are important. For example, one thing that we are participating and spending a lot of time is a very new initiative. They started in 2020. It's called the Global Partnership on AI. And this is a set of 19 countries so far, among which there is Italy and there is the US and there is the European Union as well, that try to understand how to shape the future in the correct way using artificial intelligence and other enabling technologies around AI. And that's where really we think that there is a great promise of bringing Italy and the US and European Union, countries that have shared values together to understand what is the best technology properties, but also the best regulatory frameworks, the best facilitators for data flows, and all these other issues that have been considered already. We also value really very positively the EU and US agenda for global change and the proposal for this Tech and Trade Council, because we really feel that data will be so central to AI and to the use of AI for improving humanity, society that it's important to focus on facilitating the data flows, for example, and making sure the data is handled in the right way. Of course, we know that Europe is has a slightly more regulatory-based approach to the new technologies and also AI. But as Ambassador Bhatia said, there is a coincidence of values even there, because both US and Europe have a risk-based approach to regulate not AI, but actually the AI application. So not the technology itself, but the high-risk applications of this technology. So that's really very aligned, and we think that Italy can really play a big role. After all, even in my personal experience, I mean, I know very well that Italy has excellences, a lot of excellences around AI, both in the academic and in the business side. I've been working in Italian academia for many, many years. But now that I am at IBM, you know, it's very, telling that this great, and with a long history American company, after all, decided to choose an Italian woman to lead the ethical issues around AI. So it means, I mean, I don't want to say that I represent all that happens in Italy, because of course there are many, many people doing AI with a lot of great results in Italy. But it seems that Italian values and approaches to this technology, and also to the ethical values that need to be put in place around this technology, are valued very much in the US, in the business sector.
And, talking about, let's say, challenges that artificial intelligence represent. Of course, we were talking a little bit at the beginning with Dr. Clancy about some of the geopolitical threats when it comes to technology. And in particular, when it comes to artificial intelligence, we know that there is big geopolitical competition in this field. So how, according to you, US and Italy can cooperate in this behalf to win this competition when it comes to the geopolitical interest around artificial intelligence development?
Well, I usually don't like to use the win and lose terminology. I think that really the challenges are so global that we need more cooperation. Of course, as I said, we need also shared values. So it means that if some regions of the world, or some actors, or some geopolitical entities do not have shared values, then it's important to talk with them. It's important to engage with them, but the core proposals should come from countries which have shared values. That's why the initiative that I mentioned, the Global Partnership on AI, I said it has 19 countries, but not any 19 countries. It has 19 countries that share the same values. For example, they all endorse the OECD principles for AI. So it means that the core proposals for solving the big challenges that we are facing should come from countries that share the same values, that have the same approach on how to go from very high-level principles that everybody agrees on the high-level principles, but how do you get practical? How do you go down to concrete actions and practical initiatives within the companies, within the governments, and together? And this has to come from countries that think alike, that have the same idea of the future and the same idea of what the society should be in the future, what values should be respected. And so then once we have that, of course, we should engage with everybody else, because it has to be a global solution.
Okay, so we still have a few minutes to go. And, Dr. Rossi, you were saying that IBM decided to pick and to choose an Italian person to lead their, ethical office when it comes to artificial intelligence. And that's make me have a last question for all of you. I will start with you, Dr. Rossi. So which actually a lesson Italian people should learn even more from American people after this year of, this difficult year of pandemic and economic and social crisis? And of course, and then I'm going to ask the American which lesson American people can learn from Italian people.
Well, what I learned personally is that, of course, there is more and more, especially now, the need of teamwork. And when I say teamwork, I mean collaboration between, again, different stakeholders in many respects, but also really to really understand that it's a teamwork between different stakeholders, but also between technology and humans that will help us. So in this, not 1 year, but in these years, with the pandemic, I realized that, of course, it was everyday thinking for me already, but I think that many people realize that science and technology is really crucial to help us address and accelerate the solution of our, big challenges, such as finding a vaccine, or finding the right therapies, molecules for the right therapies for the COVID crisis and so on. But this can be done only with a teamwork. And as I said, teamwork, I mean, not just all the stakeholders to be involved, but also with the technology working together with human beings. So the best solutions are always when human beings are supported by the technology. And that's, to me, it's even more evident, after this year, which has been very difficult.
Yeah, and this behalf, we have to say that, maybe one of the lessons that Italy should learn from the US is how much the US still invests all the time on research and innovation. And then, we see what this underline and imply also when it comes to solutions and vaccines, for instance, that the US found to the COVID-19 crisis.
If I can add, now that I think about what Italy can learn, is also that, for example, in Italy, I was in the academic environment when I was working in Italy. And that academic environment, I think it needs to learn to be more facilitating the multidisciplinarity in our education, in the education of the new generation, because this is education is really usually done in a vertical silos. They don't talk to each other very much. And while now, based on what I told earlier, I think we need the next generation to be much more open to multidisciplinary work.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. And Dr. Clancy, for you, which lesson American people can and should learn from Italian people, according to you, especially, after this very challenging and difficult year?
Well, I think to build on the theme of teamwork, right? I think the U.S. is now looking to sort of renew its engagement in international standards organizations, international norms, engaging international bodies in a way that it perhaps hasn't in recent history. And I think that renewed engagement will be crucial for setting a mutual understanding of those common values and norms that we're building towards, so that we contemplate how these technology issues will affect our society moving forward. We have forums both to really fully understand the technology and the policy and regulatory environments around them, but also really convince the rest of the world that is the right way to do it as well. To get to Francesca's point about other nations that we want to involve in the conversation, but we want to make sure that the standards are built around our common values. So I think another lens on teamwork, I think is again, we've got my answer.
Thank you. And Mrs. Marcegaglia, for you, which lesson the Italian people can and should learn from the American after this difficult year?
Well, I'm very, also from a personal point of view, very strongly linked with the US. So let me say one thing. First of all, as an Italian, but as an European, I think we should learn about the pragmatism of the US in the vaccine things, because, what happened in the US is that from the very beginning, companies and government and Center of Research start work. It was, I think, January 2020. They took together a lot of risk, and then the government supported the company. And we were then able to have vaccines, for the US, but also for the rest of the world. So first of all, I think this, let's say, pragmatism in doing things, a lot of trust in the capacity of the companies to get to new products, to vaccines. What happened is incredible. We got to a vaccine in 1 year, 9 months, when normally before we had a vaccine after 10 years. And this was because of this taking risks, working together, government, companies, and taking a lot of risks. The European approach is more, of aversion to risk. We have to, to pay attention, and which is, from a certain point of view, good. But from another point of view, you lose a lot of opportunities. The second point is what you said. We really have to understand clearly that we need to do a lot of research innovation. We need also to have part of our global chain. We need to have some production of very key sector and industry in our countries, in Europe. We cannot, have all part of our global chain in China. This is a big risk. We have to have some critical and strategic industry and sector production in Europe, in Italy. So this is what we have to learn from US. And the third thing we have to learn from them and from the Biden administration is that when you have a recession, where you have this strong situation, it's very important, to have a very strong monetary and fiscal policy to support the economy. So it's very important that also, the European Commission learn from that. It thinks that now they are doing this, but it's very important that they don't take, support from the economy too early, while, the US is doing a lot, because then the risk is that, the US will have a very strong growth and Europe will lag behind. So I think there is a lot to do. And finally, I want to say that it's very important that we stay very linked to the United States. I think that the idea that, there has to be an alliance between the strong democracy in the world is something I totally support and agree. And so let's work together and let's have Italy to be, as Margaret Bright said, the best European friend of the United States.
Absolutely. I think this is something that all of us really wants to realize and hope that is going to be the case. And also because maybe, as you were saying, there's also some things that the US are learning from Italy, from the European model in the past year. We think about how much welfare became a new word, very, important, even in the US, much more than it used to be in the past, because maybe this crisis let also the US understand sometimes how much is needed, a certain kind of help in this so tragical situation. But I would like to close with Ambassador Bhatia. So we just have a couple of minutes, Ambassador. And for you, which lesson do you think American people learn this very difficult year from Italians and from the Europeans?
Well, I hope that we will all learn from each other, in this period. And there are certainly enough lessons to be learned all around. I think everybody's faced, as I said, a lot of challenges. I would I think along the lines, Giovanna, of what you were just saying, it's been interesting to see in the United States, when faced with this massive crisis, this sort of unprecedented kind of crisis, it sort of revealed that some of the foundational links between government and the private sector that, frankly, Europe in general, and I think Italy in particular, has always cultivated, has always built, really weren't and haven't been as strong on the US side. And I think in a time of crisis, the need for those connections are always substantial, and particularly when you require all of government efforts. And so we've seen that development recently in the healthcare space, for instance, and we've seen it actually in the technology space growing. And as I look at, for instance, this next wave of legislation that's coming in the United States, where you are seeing the administration commit to enhance research and development, for example, I think that you're going to see signs of that ongoing partnership that's strengthening. At the end of the day, the U.S. will be a free market economy, but I think that partnership is important, that business partnership.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for everyone that was listening to us and our potential idea and solution for the future. And now talking about the near future, we are going to hand the floor to the Kennedy Center for the first part of the amazing concert by that is going to be led by Maestro Noseda.